Hello everyone, my name's Helen and I'm the National Learning Officer for Forestry England. I'm just going to take the opportunity just to have a little talk with you about trees. So at the moment there's loads of chatter about trees and the importance of them being planted everywhere. So I just thought I'd give you a little bit more of an insight into why they're such a hot topic at the moment. So to start us off, you might have heard of the Forestry Commission. So they were set up over 100 years ago, so back in 1919, after the First World War, because the UK's forests had shrunk down to just 5% of land cover, because they'd been cut down for kind of lots of shipbuilding and things like that. So the Forestry Commission was set up to kind of get those trees planted and our kind of nation forested again. Fast forward now to 2023, Forestry Commission still very much exists, and they are the government's expert forestry advisors. So they help the government to kind of deliver all the tree planting objectives, but also help to advise landowners on how to manage their woodlands effectively and how to access all the different grants and things out there. But within the Forestry Commission family, we have Forest Research, who kind of carry out research which is kind of internationally recognised. All sorts of research to do with forests, whether it's looking at the changes of climate and different species and pests and disease, but also kind of the social interaction with forests as well. And then we have Forestry England. And so we actually manage the nation's forests. And we've got 1,500 different woods and forests across England. And we manage those forests for people to enjoy, for kind of wildlife and nature, but also as a source of sustainable timber. And just to give you a quick little overshot of some of the work that we do, I've got a little video which hopefully will play.
We are for mud, for trees, for timber, for homes, for harvesting, rebooting, reconnecting and tiring the dog, for the climate, for wildlife, for curiosity and Class 7C, for planning, planting, for this generation and the next, for all. For always. We are for England. We are Forestry England.
So moving on now to trees. So this image kind of represents the forest ecosystem. So we're talking about all the living and the non-living components of a forest. And a kind of healthy, fully functioning forest ecosystem can give us loads of different benefits. So we've got sustainable timber, wood, really good kind of sustainable resource that we can use kind of all sorts of constructions and paper and lots of different things. Trees also, they take in carbon dioxide and give out oxygen that we can breathe. So that is pretty handy in itself. But they're also taking that carbon out of the atmosphere. Carbon we know kind of contributes massively to global warming and climate change. So trees can take out that carbon and lock it up inside them. They're also quite useful for kind of flood prevention. They kind of can intercept the rainfall and slow it down, reaching into the ground and the soil and getting into our rivers. Their roots obviously take up some of that moisture, and their roots also kind of help to stabilize the soils and stop it getting kind of eroded and washed away. Forests also really good for people, for us to get out and enjoy spending time in nature, but also with friends and family, and the kind of well-being effects of being out in a forest are kind of getting more and more known about. Forests are also a really good habitat for different wildlife, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. So there's loads of different benefits that trees and forests can give us. However, it's not all easy life being a tree, and there are kind of different threats and different issues that they have to deal with. So firstly, we've got pests and disease, which kind of can attack the trees and kind of damage and kill them. We've got the changing climate, so increased temperature, kind of longer periods of drought. They have a really big impact. They're already having an impact on our trees and our forests, and that's only going to increase, kind of increased storms and things. We all know storms, trees fall down. That's not ideal. We've also got the kind of effects of people directly. If people aren't managing the woodlands correctly, then that can be a threat. And also people kind of littering and setting fires to our forests. So there's lots of different things that our forests have to kind of be able to deal with. So our role at Forestry England is to kind of try and manage the forests to create their resilience so that they continue to kind of survive but kind of thrive despite all of these threats and still give us all of those ecosystem benefits. Going on to speak a little bit more about kind of those different benefits. And firstly, sustainable timber. Now, I imagine most people probably know all about deforestation in the Amazon forest and think that cutting down trees is really bad. And if it's not done in the right way, then it's probably not great. However, if it is done in the right way, then there are lots of benefits to sustainable timber production. As we kind of already said, trees capture that carbon and they kind of lock it away. So if they're cut down for timber, kind of in big kind of planks or beams, then that carbon stays locked up in that wood product for as long as it's kind of in existence. It then means we can plant new trees where those trees were, and they take in even more carbon. So it's a good kind of cycle of locking away that carbon in the air. Also, timber provides kind of a good substitute for other materials such as plastic, concrete, and steel. And the cement industry alone is responsible for 8% of global carbon dioxide emissions. So that's quite a lot. Whereas using wood locks up that carbon. So it's a win-win situation, really. Another really good thing about timber production is that nothing is wasted. So each element of the tree can be used for different things. So the main trunk can be used for kind of big long timber planks and beams and things. Smaller branches can be used for kind of fence posts and things like that, or kind of broken down and pulped in to make paper. And then even kind of the bark on the outside can be used for kind of wood chips that you get in your gardens and play areas and things. And anything left in the forest kind of rots down and those nutrients go back into the soil, ready for the next trees to be planted. So here's just another short video that tells you a little bit about our kind of production of sustainable timber.
This is my local forest. And I'm really proud to be from here because it's so beautiful. We go into an area that's been identified that needs to be worked, so it's all on a rota system dependent on whether it's a broadleaf tree or a conifer, and it's also in the forest plan to say whether we're going to clear fell it or if we're going to thin it. You have to think of the forest like a big farm, so without the management of the woods, they would generally fall into disrepair, and the wildlife, especially like butterflies, they really like grass rides, so if they become overgrown, they won't tend to use them. We have the ecologist team come out and then they survey the land. We also have the wildlife rangers that know their beats really well, so they know what's around. The work we're doing might look quite drastic, especially people that have known it for years, but actually I think the wildlife is probably better at the changing landscape than we are. Today we are at Serridge on a clear fell site. We've worked the top part, so the harvester is now down in the bottom and we've got the forwarder bringing all of the timber out of the top and stacking it ready for the lorries to come and collect. We will come back a year or so later and then start replanting straight away. So yeah, it really depends on what is laid out in the forest plans as to what we do with each site. I feel quite proud that we've got our certification against our timber and the way that we work. So it is a sustainable forest. Being part of it is actually really important because we obviously want to protect our forest and make sure that it's still here in another 100 years' time.
Jess talked there about certification. And in England, most landowners seek certification from the UK Woodlands Assurance Standard to verify that their woodlands are being managed sustainably. So that means when you kind of buy wood products or paper or anything like that, you can look out for some certain marks, and then that tells you that you're buying products that have come from a kind of sustainably managed woodland. So the most common ones are the Forest Stewardship Council, the FSC label, and also the Programme for the Endorsement of Forest Certification, the PEFC one that you can see there. Another good one to look out for is the Grown in Britain logo. So that's the only one that guarantees that timber has been grown sustainably and legally in the UK in line with all of those standards. In England, we actually import 80% of our timber, which is crazy. China is the only country that imports more timber than us. So you can imagine by importing timber, that's still kind of using lots of emissions to kind of transport. And also by having homegrown timber, think of all the jobs that that creates. So grown in Britain is a really good one to look out for. Moving on now to look at kind of forests and how they can be good for kind of wildlife, nature and biodiversity. So biodiversity basically means all the variety of life on Earth. And the greater the biodiversity of an area, so the more kind of plants and animal species, fungi, microbes, all sorts of things, the more you've got in an area, the healthier that ecosystem is. That's because all of these different elements, they interact, they help each other out, and that increases the productivity of the ecosystem, but then in turn, all of those benefits and those ecosystem services that the forest provides for us. Biodiversity is really important because it can reduce the impacts of pests and disease, natural disasters, and other threats that our forests can have. This is because the different components will kind of respond differently. Some might be really affected, but other ones might not be so bad. So kind of together, they can help to keep everything kind of running along. However, we are in a global biodiversity crisis. And currently, a third of all woodland wildlife species are in decline, and 1 in 10 are threatened by extinction. However, there is hope. Do not fret. So Forestry England have got a biodiversity plan to kind of try and improve the state of our biodiversity. So there's kind of 5 different things we're focusing on. Firstly, we are protecting wildlife and habitats. So over half of England's rarest species can be found in the forests. So we're kind of really making sure we can protect and improve those habitats for wildlife. We're also creating networks of kind of open habitats. So in the video, Jess talked about kind of the importance of open areas for kind of butterflies, but also reptiles. And actually 1/5 of the land that we manage is open habitats like peatlands and heathlands. So we're not all about trees because it's important to have a good mix of different habitats for biodiversity. We're also looking to protect ancient trees. So we don't cut them all down. Ancient trees are really important because although they're the oldest living thing we've got, so that's amazing, and the kind of cultural importance that they have is really good, but also they provide amazing habitats and all those kind of nooks and crannies for loads of different wildlife. We're also returning lost species to our environment. So from beavers to white-tailed eagles and pine martens, we're kind of helping to reintroduce these lost species, especially ones that help to improve natural processes. So beavers, again, really important for kind of flood prevention, but they build their dams, which then creates ponds, which then is then a really important habitat for lots of other wildlife. So there's lots of amazing things that they can do. And then finally, we're looking at forest wilding. So kind of rather than focusing on a specific species or a specific habitat, you just kind of let nature do its course, but you're still managing it. You're just working with those natural processes to kind of produce all those benefits, including sustainable timber production. So that's a bit about what we're doing. There's a few things that you can do to help as well. So something just as simple as nature-friendly gardens. So letting an area in your kind of school, home, community, just kind of overgrow a little bit, plant some wildflowers, because those insects, they're really kind of key, important for the food chain. And again, all that interaction means they have a big effect on everything around them. You could also plant trees. That's great, but you've got to make sure you're planting the right tree in the right place. Something else that you can do is some volunteering. So it could be some conservation work with a local charity or organisation. You could carry out some wildlife surveys. There's lots of things we do. So you can have a look and see what is out there, depending on what interests you the most. So at Forestry England, we partner with an organisation called Trash Free Trails, and they're working to increase nature connection between people. So they kind of really value the nature and spending time there, but then also they kind of realise the impact of litter and rubbish in our forests. So they've got their A team all around the country who help to pick up rubbish, but they don't just pick it up, they have a kind of a look through it and see what it is, what is making up all the rubbish, and then they submit reports so they've got a big record of everything all across the country. So yeah, they collate all that information. So they're trying to kind of find the root cause of the issue with the manufacturers or educating the general public as well. So moving on now from kind of forests for biodiversity and wildlife, we'll have a look at forests for people. So part of our role as Forestry England is to make sure everyone feels safe and welcome in our forests and that they're accessible for everyone to kind of enjoy and get all those benefits. So whether it's kind of families spending time together in forests or kind of people just going out for dog walks in the peace and quiet. We've got things for the more adventurous and the sporty people. But forests are also kind of a really good creative backdrop and kind of inspire lots of artworks and various works like that. We also have our Forest Live concerts, where it's kind of the forest is transformed. They're a great place for learning, whether it's kind of specific environmental studies or, I mean, any subject outside makes it a bit more exciting and a bit more interesting, doesn't it? We've also volunteering, we've also touched on. But forests are also a great place just to kind of escape from all the busyness and the hustle and bustle of everyday life. And then finally, kind of it's become increasingly recognised the importance of forests on our health and well-being. And so we're doing lots of work with kind of social prescribers, so working with health professionals to refer people to kind of spending time with kind of groups out in the forest, connecting with nature, but also with other people and giving that opportunity to kind of get out and again, get all those benefits from being outside in nature. So that's a very quick overview of some of the benefits that our forests give us. However, as I said at the start, there are threats to our forests. The main ones being kind of climate change and also pests and disease. So the climate is changing and it is already having a bit of an impact on our trees, with kind of hotter temperatures, longer periods of drought, increased storm events. The important thing here is planning ahead. So again, Jess mentioned in that video about the forest plan. And when you're kind of dealing with trees, it's important to be planning far, far ahead because trees that are being planted now are still going to be around in kind of 40, 50, 60 years time. So we're kind of look at the latest research and evidence to plant what trees we think are going to be the most resilient and also continue to give us those benefits. We're also always up for kind of trialing new things and having a go to see what happens. So some of the things we're doing is we're kind of increasing diversity in what we're planting. So just last year, we planted 98 different species of trees, thinking carefully about kind of the soil type and what we're wanting to get from those trees and what we're planting kind of next to each other. But we're also looking at trees that come from warmer climates. So countries that have got our future climate now. We're also creating new woodlands. Working with kind of local organisations, county councils and things, but also buying up our own land to create new woodlands and plant lots of new trees. As well as creating new woodlands, we're also kind of connecting up existing woodlands because by having kind of a big joined up approach that increases their resilience. We've got some big nurseries around the country, which is where we get a lot of our trees from with our own kind of seed supplies. And they've got really super strict biosecurity controls. And then throughout the tree's lifetime, we will continue to monitor them so we can keep a really close eye. And if there are signs of trees, pests and disease, then we can kind of nip that in the bud and try and minimize the impact. So I've got one final video that just kind of demonstrates the impact that pests and disease can have and how it can disrupt our kind of management, but also what you can do to help out.
It's quite cold.
It's open, it's quite bare.
It looks like something's missing from the landscape.
Locals really knew this area and they came to recognise this area specifically with the Japanese larch trees because they were such an important part of the landscape here. Tree felling is a normal part of sustainable forest management and we plan this so that the impact on the environment is as small as possible. However, because this particular area had a tree disease known as Phytophthora ramorum, the trees had to be felled around 40 years before their time to help limit the spread of the disease. This has had a big impact on the environment that might take years to recover.
The tree disease spreads via natural pathways, so it is spread in wind and rain and watercourses. However, humans also do play their part in spreading disease, and we can actually spread it much further and faster than natural mechanisms can. Members of the public can really help reduce the risk of spreading tree diseases by, when they turn up to woodlands and forests, that they ensure that their bikes, buggies and boots are free of mud and soil. And again, when they leave the sites, that they brush down any excess build-up of soil.
It's a very simple thing to do, but it's very important because it basically means that other people can enjoy the woods, habitats get left and maintained and secured, and also a timber market can be maintained for years to come.
So as well as keeping your boots, buggies and bikes clean when you go to forests, there's a few other things that you can do to help out as well. So there are kind of lots of resources out there on the Forest Research website and our own website, and lots of other ones out there that give you kind of guides on how to kind of spot common pests and disease. Or it might even be that you just kind of regularly walk through a certain area of woodland and you just start to notice that something looks a little bit odd, like there's a fungus or there's kind of trees are bare during the summer months when you wouldn't expect it. So what you can do is you can report that to Forest Research through Tree Alert, which is on their website. It's super simple. It kind of guides you what to do and how to do it. And then you kind of done your part in kind of saying, oh, something might be wrong here. And then the team at Forest Research can have a look and see if they think it's worth investigating, whether they know about it already or not. So just before we wrap up, I've kind of given you a very quick overview of the different work that Forestry England does. But hopefully you see that there's quite a wide range of different work that we do. So it does mean there are lots of different career opportunities which may or may not be of interest. So whether it's kind of working with people and helping them to enjoy the forest, or it could be working with the wildlife and trying to do some conservation work, improving their habitat. Could be working with trees themselves, kind of planting them, overseeing the kind of forest cycle and management, or even working in communications, kind of marketing or design work. There are kind of lots of different roles out there. We're doing kind of lots of work at the moment with our career pages, but yeah, feel free to go on our website and have a little look at the different opportunities and different potential pathways that would help to get you there. So finally, just to wrap up, so trees do give us lots of amazing benefits, but they do have kind of lots of threats, and so we need to make sure we look after them, and then in turn they will help to look after us.